Chapter 2, The Conquest of Canaan, 1405 to 1400 BC. Joshua built an altar to the Lord God of Israel in Mount Ebal. The altar was built with whole stones over which no man had wielded an iron tool. Joshua offered on it burnt offerings to the Lord, and sacrificed peace offerings. In the presence of the children of Israel, he wrote on the stones a copy of the law of Moses. Afterward he read all the words of the law, the blessings, and the curses according to all that was written in the book of the law. There was not a word that Moses commanded, which Joshua did not read before all the assembly of Israel with the women, the little ones, and the strangers who were living among them. Joshua 8 verses 30 to 35. Israel's treaty with the Gibeonites. The kings who were on the side of Jordan, in the hills and in the lowland, and in all the coasts of the great sea toward Lebanon, the Hittite, the Amorites, the Canaanite, the Perizzites, the Hivite, and the Jebusites, heard about the fall of Jericho and Ai. Then they gathered to fight with Joshua and Israel with one accord. Joshua 9 verses 1 and 2. However, when the inhabitants of Gibeon, the Hivites, heard what Joshua had done to Jericho and Ai, they worked craftily, and went and pretended to be ambassadors. They took old sacks on their donkeys, old wineskins torn and mended, old and patched sandals on their feet, and old garments on themselves, and all the bread of their provision was dry and moldy. Then they went to Joshua, to the camp at Gilgal, and said to him and to the men of Israel, "We have come from a far country, now therefore, make a covenant with us." Remember that the children of Israel were not to make a covenant with any nation, no matter what. The men of Israel said to the Hivites, "Perhaps you dwell among us, so how can we make a covenant with you?" Joshua said to them, "Who are you, and where do you come from?" They said to him, "Your servants have come from a very far country because of the name of the Lord your God. We have heard of his fame, and all that he did in Egypt, and all that he did to the two kings of the Amorites who were beyond the Jordan, to Sihon king of Heshbon, and Og king of Bashan, who was at Ashtaroth. Therefore, our elders and all the inhabitants of our country spoke to us, saying, Take provisions with you for the journey, and go to meet them, and say to them, We are your servants, now therefore, make a covenant with us. The bread of ours we took hot for our provision from our houses on the day we departed to come to you. Now look, it is dry and moldy. These wineskins which we filled were new, and see, they are torn, and these our garments and our sandals have become old because of the very long journey." Joshua 9 verses 3 to 13. Then the men of Israel took some of their provisions, but they did not ask counsel of the Lord. So Joshua made peace with them, and made a covenant with them to let them live, and the rulers of the congregation swore by the Lord God of Israel that they would not attack them. Joshua 9 verses 14 and 15. It happened at the end of 3 days, after they had made a covenant with the Hivites, they heard that they were their neighbors who dwelt near them. Joshua 9 verse 16. Israel's mistake was that they did not seek counsel from the Lord God. The Lord warned Israel to take heed, lest they make a covenant with the inhabitants of the land where they were going, unless it be a snare in their midst. Exodus 34 verse 11. Then the children of Israel journeyed and came to the Gibeonite cities on the 3rd day. Now their cities were Gibeon, Kephirah, Beeroth, and Kirjath-jearim. However, the children of Israel did not attack them, because the rulers of the congregation had sworn to them by the Lord God of Israel that they would not attack them. Therefore, the entire congregation complained against the rulers. The rulers said to all the congregation, "We have sworn to them by the Lord God of Israel, now therefore, we may not touch them. This we will do to them, we will let them live, unless wrath be upon us because of the oath which we swore to them." The rulers said to them, "Let them live, but let them be woodcutters and water carriers for the entire congregation, as the rulers had promised them." Joshua 9 verses 17 to 21. Then Joshua called for the Gibeonites, And he spoke to them, saying, Why have you deceived us, saying, We are very far from you, when you dwell near us? Now therefore, you are cursed, and none of you will be freed from being slaves, woodcutters, and water carriers for the house of my God. Joshua 9 verses 22 and 23. They answered Joshua and said, Because your servants were clearly told that the Lord your God commanded his servant Moses to give you all the land, and to destroy all the inhabitants of the land from before you, therefore, we were very much afraid for our lives because of you, and have done this thing. Now, here we are, in your hands, do with us as it seems good and right to do to us. Joshua delivered them out of the hand of the children of Israel, so that they did not kill them. However, that day Joshua made them woodcutters and water carriers for the congregation and for the altar of the Lord, in the place which he would choose, even to this day. Joshua 9 verses 24 to 27. The Lord fights for Israel. When Adonizedek, king of Jerusalem, heard how Joshua had taken Ai, and had destroyed it as he had done to Jericho and its king, and how the inhabitants of Gibeon had made peace with Israel, and were among them, they feared greatly. They feared because Gibeon was a great city like one of the royal cities, it was greater than Ai, and all its men were mighty. Therefore, Adonizedek king of Jerusalem sent to Hoam king of Hebron, Piram king of Jarmuth, Japhia king of Lachish, and Debir king of Eglon, saying, Come up to me and help me, that we may attack Gibeon, for it has made peace with Joshua and with the children of Israel. Therefore, the 5 kings of the Amorites, the king of Jerusalem, the king of Hebron, the king of Jarmuth, the king of Lachish, and the king of Eglon, gathered together and went up, they and all their armies, and camped before Gibeon and made war against it. Joshua 10 verses 1 to 5. The men of Gibeon sent to Joshua at the camp at Gilgal, saying, Do not forsake your servants. Come up to us quickly, save us and help us, for all the kings of the Amorites who dwell in the mountains have gathered together against us. Therefore, Joshua ascended from Gilgal, he and all the people of war with him, and all the mighty men of valor. The Lord said to Joshua, Do not fear them, for I have delivered them into your hand. Not a man of them will stand before you. Joshua, therefore, came upon them suddenly, having marched all night from Gilgal. So, the Lord routed them before Israel, killed them with a great slaughter at Gibeon, chased them along the road that goes to Beth-horon, and struck them down as far as Azekah and Makkedah. It happened, as they fled before Israel and was on the descent of Beth-horon, that the Lord cast down large hailstones from heaven on them as far as Azekah, and they died. There were more who died from the hailstones than the children of Israel killed with the sword. Joshua 10 verses 6 to 11. Then Joshua spoke to the Lord in the day when the Lord delivered up the Amorites before the children of Israel, and he said in the sight of Israel, Sun, stand still over Gibeon, and moon, in the valley of Ajalon. Therefore, the sun stood still, and the moon stopped, until the people had revenge upon their enemies. Joshua 10 verses 12 and 13. Is this not written in the book of Jasher? Therefore, the sun stood still in the midst of heaven, and did not hasten to go down for about a whole day. There has been no day like that, before it or after it, that the Lord heeded the voice of a man, for the Lord fought for Israel. Then Joshua returned, and all Israel with him, to the camp at Gilgal. Joshua 10 verses 12 to 15. Joshua executes 5 Amorite kings. The 5 kings of the Amorites had fled and hidden themselves in a cave at Makkedah. It was told Joshua, saying, The 5 kings have been found hidden in the cave at Makkedah. Therefore, Joshua told them to roll large stones against the mouth of the cave, and set men by it to guard them. They were not to stay there themselves, but pursue their enemies, and attack their rear guard. They were not to allow their enemies to enter their cities, for the Lord their God has delivered them into their hand. Then it happened, while Joshua and the children of Israel made an end of slaying them with a very great slaughter, until they had finished, that those who escaped entered fortified cities. All the people returned to the camp, to Joshua at Makkedah, in peace. Joshua 10 verses 16 to 21. No one moved his tongue against any of the children of Israel. Then Joshua opened the mouth of the cave, and had the 5 kings brought out to him, the king of Jerusalem, the king of Hebron, the king of Jarmuth, the king of Lachish, and the king of Eglon. They were brought out, and Joshua called for all the men of Israel, and told the captains of the men of war who went with him, to come near and put their feet on their necks. Joshua told them to not be afraid, nor be dismayed, be strong and of good courage, for thus the Lord will do to all their enemies against whom they fought. Afterward Joshua struck them and killed them, and hanged them on 5 trees, and they were hanging on the trees until evening. During the time the sun was going down, Joshua commanded that they take them down from the trees, cast them into the cave where they had been hidden, and lay large stones against the cave's mouth, which remain until this very day. Joshua 10 verses 21 to 27. Conquest of the Southland. On that day, Joshua took the city of Makkedah, and struck it and its king with the edge of the sword. He destroyed them all the people who were in it. He let none remain. He also did to the king of Makkedah as he had done to the king of Jericho. Then Joshua passed from Makkedah, and all Israel with him, to the city of Libnah, and they fought against Libnah. Likewise, the Lord delivered it and its king into the hand of Israel. He struck it and all the people who were in it with the edge of the sword. He let none remain in it, but did to its king as he had done to the king of Jericho. Then Joshua passed from Libnah, and all Israel with him, to the city of Lachish, and they encamped against it and fought against it. The Lord delivered Lachish into the hand of Israel, who took it on the 2nd day, and struck it and all the people who were in it with the edge of the sword, according to all that they had done to Libnah. Then Horam king of Gezer came up to help Lachish, and Joshua struck him and his people, until he left him none remaining. Joshua 10 verses 28 to 33. Joshua left Lachish, and went to the city of Eglon and all Israel with him, and they encamped against it and fought against it. They took it on that day and struck it with the edge of the sword. All the people who were in it, he destroyed that day, according to all that he had done to Lachish. Joshua went up from Eglon, and all Israel with him, to the city of Hebron, and they fought against it. They took it and struck it with the edge of the sword, its king, all its cities, and all the people who were in it. He left none remaining, according to all that he had done to Eglon. He destroyed it and all the people who were in it. Then Joshua returned, and all Israel with him, to the city of Debir, and they fought against it. He took Debir and its king and all its cities. They struck them with the edge of the sword and destroyed all the people who were in it. He left none remaining as he had done to Hebron, so he did to Debir and its king, as he had done also to Libnah and its king. Joshua 34 to 39. Therefore, Joshua conquered all the land, the mountain country and the south and the lowland and the wilderness slopes, and all their kings. He left none remaining, but utterly destroyed all that breathed, as the Lord God of Israel had commanded. Joshua conquered them from Kadesh Barnea as far as Gaza, and all the country of Goshen, even as far as Gibeon. All these kings and their land Joshua took at one time, because the Lord God of Israel fought for Israel. Then Joshua returned, and all Israel with him, to the camp at Gilgal. Joshua 10 verses 40 to 43. The Northern Conquest. When Jabin king of Hazor heard these things, he sent to Jobab king of Madon, to the king of Shimron, to the king of Achshaph. Jabin sent to the kings who were from the north, the kings in the mountains, and in the plains south of Chinneroth. He sent to the kings in the lowland, in the heights of Dor on the west, to the Canaanites in the east, and in the west, the Amorite, the Hittite, the Perizzites, the Jebusites in the mountains, and the Hivite below Hermon in the land of Mizpah. Therefore they went out, they and all their armies with them, as many people as the sand that is on the seashore in multitude, with very many horses and chariots. It happens, when all this coalition of kings had met, they came and camped together at the waters of Merom to fight against Israel. The Lord said to Joshua, "Do not be afraid because of them, for tomorrow about this time I will deliver all of them slain before Israel. You will hamstring their horses and burn their chariots with fire." Joshua and all the people of war with him came against them suddenly by the waters of Merom, and they attacked them. The Lord delivered them into the hand of Israel, who defeated them and chased them to Greater Sidon, to the brook Misrephoth, and to the valley of Mizpah eastward. They attacked them until they left none of them remaining. Therefore Joshua did to them as the Lord had told him. He hamstrung their horses and burned their chariots with fire. Joshua turned back at that time and took the city of Hazor, and struck its king with the sword, for Hazor was formerly the head of all those kingdoms. They struck all the people who were in it with the edge of the sword, destroying them. There was none left breathing. Then he burned Hazor with fire. Therefore all the cities of those kings, and all their kings, Joshua took and struck with the edge of the sword. He destroyed them, as Moses the servant of the Lord had commanded. However, as for the cities that stood on their mounds, Israel burned none of them, except Hazor only, which Joshua burned. All the spoil of these cities and the livestock, the children of Israel took as booty for themselves, but they struck every man with the edge of the sword until they had destroyed them, and they left none breathing. As the Lord had commanded Moses his servant, Moses commanded Joshua, and Joshua did. He left nothing undone of all that the Lord had commanded Moses. Joshua 11 verses 1 to 15. Thank you for listening to Chapter 2 of the book Into the Promised Land from the book series It's All About Worship and To Whom You Worship by Doris N. Whaley Smith. The complete book in whole can be purchased on Amazon.com.